Please give a big welcome to Sue Ellen Wrightson, United Australia Party candidate for Warringah and Shadow Minister for Families.
Come on, Ozzy, come on, come on. Come on, Ozzy, come on, come on. Come on, Ozzy, come on, come on. Come on, Ozzy, come on.
Thank you, everyone. Men and women of Australia. For a long time, too long a time, I trusted our politicians. I trusted the political parties we had in Australia to do the right thing. I thought that politicians were honest, that they had integrity, and that they cared about our country. I wanted to serve our community, so I stood for my local council and I was elected. I joined one of the two major political parties. I thought I would be respected as an elected councillor and as a woman. I thought the focus of the party would be on serving Australia and making it a better place. But I was wrong. I was wrong, dead wrong. Politicians don't care about you. They just fight with each other and for each other. Labor and Liberal just fight and tear each other apart. And Australians suffer, men, women and children. If politicians are not having affairs with each other or conspiring on how to hold on to power, they're forever plotting to see how they can get more money from the taxpayer, from you and I. It is time to make them accountable. It is time to throw them out. I love this country. I love Australia. I love our people, and we deserve a better future. We deserve to be all that we can be. It's not just for you and me, and it's not for what came before us. It's for all of us because it's who we are. Australians deserve a fair go. The unemployed in the Latrobe Valley in Victoria, the families living below the poverty line in Tasmania, the congested cities of Sydney and Melbourne, the abandoned manufacturing industry of South Australia, the 35% of the community who are unemployed in Elizabeth, the 50% of youth unemployed in the western suburbs of Melbourne, the homeless, our forgotten senior citizens and our disowned veterans, the people of Western Australia, the devastated communities of Central and Western Queensland, our broken industries, our families that have been torn apart by the banking industry. We all need a fair go. The time has come to unite this country. The United Australia Party is going to bring change. The United Australia Party puts Australians first, not politicians. The United Australia Party is standing in every seat for election in the House of Representatives. Why, you may ask? Because we care about every single Australian. If every policy, if every waking minute of government action puts you first, puts your family first, puts Australia first, what more could we ask for? There has never been an Australian more attacked than Clive Palmer. But God bless him for giving this country the United Australia Party. It is about giving Australians a choice at this election, and it's not about an individual. It's about you and me. It's about our mums, our dads and children and our neighbours. It's about what it means to be an Aussie. It's about footy and cricket, our heroes and our homes. It's about warm nights and caring. We need members of Parliament who care about us, who care about our country, and who are capable. I'm sick of hearing politicians talk and do nothing. Bill Shorten, the Greens and all the rest. They don't build, they just destroy. They tell us what we can't do rather than what we can do. Well, we can, and Australia can.
Yes, we can!
I know the next part. The best welfare is a job. The best security is a home. The best life is a family. The best country is Australia. Love Australia. Put Australians first. We can make Australia great. We can build a strong country. We can have a better future and a stronger nation. Together, we can achieve the extraordinary. Only you can change our country by voting for the United Australia Party. Let's make Australia great.
I have the greatest privilege and honour to introduce to you a man who has enabled all of this to happen. He is a man who I hold the greatest admiration. He is a strong and resilient leader. He's a compassionate and generous individual who continues to fight for what is right and is determined to make difference for Australia's future. Not just for today, but for generations to come. To whom much is given, much is required. Australia is fortunate, and our country and our community, to have such a person as him. He loves our country. Please make welcome the leader of the United Australia Party, our Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Clive Palmer.
Men and women of Australia, politicians don't fight for you, they just fight each other. If they're not having affairs with each other, they're thinking about how they can rip us off and take more of our tax dollars. There's been a massive decline in the living standards of Australia. Labor started it with the $55,000 million of spending on the NBN. And it still doesn't work. What a waste. But there's been no money to feed our livestock from the government during the drought. Politicians don't care about us. If they did, they'd do something about the 4,000 Australians made homeless by the drought, the unemployed in Elizabeth, in the Pilbara, in Western Australia, the forgotten people of Tasmania who have had a declining living standard now for 25 years, people living in the Hunter and the Latrobe Valley of Victoria. Right across this nation, people have seen their living standards decline. And the Liberals say they're going to give us tax cuts. But when are they going to give us tax cuts? In 2024. You know what that means? It means the Liberals have got to win this election, which they won't. It means they've got to win the next election. They've got to win the next election and the next election after that. And if they do, there'll be some guy that comes on, sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and tells you the G-curve's gone up and it's gone down and now we can't do it. And you know, Labor's worse than the Liberals. They want to give us tax cuts too, but not tomorrow, in 2024. They're even worse because they're saying that people who are earning less than $40,000 a year will have a tax cuts too. They know that's not true. They just want to hoodwink the public and take from the public purse for themselves. It's time we threw them out. I know we can. Electric cars, that's a great idea, isn't it? When the electricity prices is going sky high, we're going to have electric cars. That's what Labor calls a good idea. Wake up, Bill Shorten. Wake up, Australia. The Liberal Party is going to solve all our power prices, all our problems, by giving us a once-only $75 payment. That'll solve everything, won't it? That doesn't cut the mustard, ScoMo. We're not mugs. In southern New South Wales, our farms and rural enterprises are being destroyed. We have to scrap the Murray-Darling Basin to protect and defend the rights of Australian workers and farmers in those regions. Our farmers need free water from their own dams. You know, in New South Wales now, you've got to pay for your own water in your own dam. And how can that happen when your stock are dying, when you don't have any money in the bank and you're hard up against it? That's what we've got to change in this country. We've got to change it so people have a fair go. We're losing our livelihood, losing our country, and we're losing Australia. And now's the time for you to make a stand. It all starts here at Coolum today, and it won't finish until we're in government in Canberra. Only the United Australia Party can save this country. Only the United Australia Party can do the things that have to be done, because we fear nobody except the Australian people, and we'll fight for them until the end of time. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again for no result. Since the end of World War II, this country has voted over and over again for the Liberal Nationals or the Labor Party for no result. It's time to change things. It's time to stop insanity and make this country as great as it could be. We can stop the congestion in our cities by producing fast trains within a 300-mile radius of our CBDs that get people in town within 1 hour. You know, my daughter had a unit in Sydney. It was about 10 foot square. It was costing her about nearly $1,000 a week. I wanted to buy it for her and it was only $2 million. How can people support their families? How can they have a family life? How can we have a stable society if people can no longer live and have a community? This country once was the highest level of home ownership in the world, and we've sunk to 70%, and 30% of our homes are now owned by foreigners who don't live here. A United Australia government will boost construction, increase housing demand, make home loans affordable, by making interest on home loans tax deductible. Everyone knows that Australia now has the highest power and electricity costs in the world, that our industries are broken, that our people are unemployed, and that we're no longer competitive. Yet at the same time, the United States, Japan and Europe uses our uranium to power their nuclear reactors to provide their citizens with cheap power. It's time for it to stop. It's time for this country to use the advantages that God has given us and stop exploiting our future overseas and bring nuclear power here so we have cheap energy too, so we can complete, so our people can be employed, so our old people don't go cold in winter. We can do it. No emissions, a clean environment, cheap electricity based on a competitive manufacturing industry and jobs, and more jobs for Australians. We can do it. And what's more, we've been doing it for 50 years. We have a nuclear reactor in Sydney. It's been running without any problems right in the middle of Sydney. Yet we haven't had the benefit of our uranium, of our minerals. We've sent it off to Japan, to China, to Singapore, while our industries have closed. We've got to change it and make this country great again. If we take our resources from Queensland and Western Australia and we send them to South Australia, New South Wales and Victoria and Tasmania, we can process our own minerals. And instead of selling our minerals for $100 a tonne, we can get $15,000 to $20,000 for them, like the Chinese do and the Japanese do. How can it be that Japan has become the third largest economy in the world based on Australian minerals, on processing Australian minerals? Yet their wage costs are higher. They suffer from the tyranny of distance, but they've got a will to do it. I admire the Japanese people, but I admire the Australian people more, and I know that we can do it here in our country with our own resources too. And the federal government should be standing behind people who want to do this in this country. And when we have a United Australia Party government, we'll make sure it happens for all Australians so that we can get the best benefits that we deserve from our own resources. In the South China Sea, China's pumped up islands, established ports, made air bases. And you know, in Western Australia, you've all seen that the Chinese government now has control of an air base in Australia and another one at Merredin near Perth. The United Australia government will have the Royal Australian Air Force based at that base to protect and defend this country from any sort of foreign invasion. You know, if China controls our dairy property, uses our milk to make baby powder, then all exports it to China, what are Aussie babies going to do about it? What political party is going to stand up for Australian babies when they can't get formula in this country? It's time we did it. It's time we did it. Time we supported it. The United Australia Party will put Australia first. That means putting you first. From wherever you've come from, anywhere in the world, if you live on this continent, if you've got a combined future with us, we've got to intertwine our future with you and put you first. And that's what we'll do. We plan to introduce zonal taxation so that communities living 200 kilometres away from a state capital will pay 20% less tax. And that will act as an incentive to take people from our cities to our rural communities. It'll also act as an incentive for jobs. But you know, it's crazy in this country. The Commonwealth government is the largest practitioner of bankruptcies. It sends companies broke at a faster rate than anyone else. People go out on the scrap heap of life, end up on unemployment benefits, and who's paying for it? You're paying for it. Why do they go broke? because our businesses, our small businesses, our companies have to pay their tax 1 year in advance before they're made a profit. That's why they go broke. And we'll stop that from happening. And we'll release $70 billion into the Australian economy, and this country will boom like it's never boomed before. We're going to turbocharge this economy. If businesses have cash to employ people and to expand, our exports will get bigger, our prosperity will grow, and if we can establish downstream processing from our resources, it means we can have a rising living standard. We can increase the wages that we pay our workforce, not by saying they just need an increase every year, but by productivity, by producing more, by making more money, by expanding our gross national product. We can make Australia great again. A great man once said, an injustice to one man anywhere is an injustice to all men everywhere. Indigenous babies are dying at 3 times the rate of white babies in this country. No society at any time in the history of man places a higher value than the life of a child. But Labor and Liberal are happy to do nothing while Australian children die. A united Australian government will take immediate steps on the first day of its appointment to stop that injustice and ensure that healthcare services are available for all children, regardless of race or colour or where they might live. We need to provide more funding for education in this country. A free nation can rise no higher than the standard of excellence set in its schools and colleges. Ignorance and illiteracy and unskilled workers and school dropouts and failures of our education system. The past breed failures in our social and economic system. Unemployment and chronic dependency. This is a waste of human resources, a loss of productive power and purchasing power, and it requires an increase of our ever-increasing taxes to support it. The loss of only 1 year's income due to unemployment is more than the total cost of a person at school from grade 8 to grade 12. At the start of the century, only 10% of our adults had a high school or a university education. Today, such an education is becoming an important requirement of increasing number of jobs. Yet all of our universities, from Brisbane to Sydney and Melbourne and Perth in Western Australia, we find that all of our higher education places for master's degrees are occupied by foreign students. There's something in the order of 95% to 5% of Australians. Those universities were established in World War II and other times to support our people. And we've got to make sure that Australian people get the opportunity to go to university and to benefit from the nation and to support our initiative. You know, national security is not about stopping a couple of leaky boats, as ScoMo would tell you, or Bill Shorten would argue about. It's securing our nation from foreign invasion. There's nothing more important than that. And for the last 15 years, our defence forces have been busy stopping refugees coming from this country. Yet the threat of other countries interfering with our future grows, and we don't address those problems. A United Australia Party will make sure that we address those problems, that we have nuclear submarines to protect this country like all other countries do. China produces nuclear submarines. The survival time of our submarines in a first-class conflict is 5 minutes. I don't want your family, I don't want your future depending on 5 minutes. We don't want to send Australians to sea in times of conflict and know that they have no chance of survival. Yet we build submarines to promote our economy because people have been destroyed in South Australia. The biggest employer in South Australia is the federal government. The second biggest employer is the state government. And the third biggest employer is local councils. That's why we build submarines in South Australia for 5 times the cost we could buy them from the United States. And we're going to change it and make it different so that we have a real and proper defence force.
We need to develop our country, much as they do in the United States. You can drive from New York right across to California, and you'll see industries all the way across and diversity which is taking place in that country. Yet all of our country, everything we do is based upon the coast. More and more people are clogging up our cities, and less people are engaged in productive activity. We have to reverse that trend in regional Australia and make sure that they can produce more for us so that we have a proper future. We must encourage Australians to buy Australian produce, and the labelling and packaging regime needs to be changed so Australians clearly know what they're purchasing, where it comes from. If the product contained in any package or container is not at least 95% Australian product, then it will not have the green and gold classification and labelled Australian as it is now. There's about 3 or 4% of Australians who can afford to have a lobbyist in Canberra to do their bidding. And when I was a member of the House of Representatives, every day there'd be lobbyists at my door and they'd be making appointments for me day in and day out. The other 97% of Australians can't afford to have a lobbyist. So I like to look at our party, the United Australia Party, is your lobbyist for them. And we're going to make sure that we do the best we can in the coming Parliament and make sure Australians get a fair shake rather than overseas corporations. "95% of Australians agree on all issues, yet Labor and Liberals spend 100% of the time arguing about the 5% of things that they don't agree on. Australia needs unity, a sense of purpose to know where we're going to. We've got to remain focused. You know, when the Anzacs went overseas, they didn't go overseas as members of the Liberal Party or members of the Labor Party. They went there as Australians. When Billy Hughes was Prime Minister, he was there for all of Australia. It mattered. We don't want division, we want unity. We want to put the idea of a class war behind us and unite this country and do all that we can for each other. My family has a strong commitment to Australia. My great uncle was killed in World War I. 5 of my family members have served in World War II in Kokoda, Tobruk. And Martin Brewster, who is standing as the number 2 Senate candidate in Queensland in this election, led the Interfet team in setting up all of the securities in Timor for the Royal Australian Air Force. All these people have done more than I could ever do for this country, have offered their lives for the benefit of their fellow Australians. So that's a challenge for you to ask yourself, what have I done for this country? What can I do for this country? What can I do for my future? It's a challenge to all the people in Australia to realise that we are a very special country, made up of the people who are prepared to die and to serve us and serve all of us, not just the Liberals, not just the Labor people, but all of us. So we've got to have a sense of purpose in this nation again. And if we do that, we can put Australians first and we can make Australia great again. If you're happy with all that's being done now is enough, is sufficient for you and your family, you should vote again for ScoMo or Shorten. They're all the same. But if you believe, as I do, that this nation has the strength and potential to live out its heritage, to fulfil the dreams of the Anzacs, to return Australia to being a lucky country it should be, you must give the United Australia Party your support. Together we will lead this nation, and together Australia will prevail. God bless Australia.
Authorised by Clive Palmer for the United Australia Party, Brisbane.